Often copied, but never duplicated. What's up, team? I got with me Mr. John Mikesh. 2,300?
2,300, yeah.
2,300
Yesterday
agents.
We had 2,300
in the organization with eXp. I've been with eXp going on 20 months, 274 agents in the organization, trying to be like...
That's amazing growth though, dude, in your time.
Trying to be like this guy when I grow up. We have conversations regularly because teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
And collaboration is the new currency. And we have conversations regularly with agents. A lot of these agents are highly productive. They're looking to have conversations and potentially make a change from a traditional firm, or one that is a traditional firm that pretends that they're not. Right? And so we were talking off camera about how amazing it is that most agents don't read ICAs. They don't actually...
Well, did you read your last update to your iPhone agreement? Like it comes through, you just like click, click, click.
Oh, that's true, dude. We
don't ever read that stuff.
Yeah. And in reading it though, you can really get a clear understanding of what that brokerage firm's business model is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I would even say this, what their future intentions are for that business. Because, I'll talk to real agents a lot, right? And they don't even know what they can't do. Their independent contractor agreement says that they can't offer out any free leads, any free coaching, any type of additional support, anything to encourage an agent to maybe sign up with that company and name them as their sponsor. Their independent contractor agreement literally says they can't do it. They can't throw events, they can't do lunch and learns, they can't do anything. Now, we know a lot of agents are doing those things, but my question to them is, what happens when they enforce it?
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to risk everything you're going to build so that one day they say, hey, you've been in violation of this all along, now we're taking that away from you?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting that it's in the agreement and other people are doing it, but they're just like, okay. Why? Because that's what you have to do in order to, to really attract and add value. And I think it also is handicapping an agent from being entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And adding value. Because my experience in this game is it's relationships plus value over time.
Yeah, I think, when people come in second and they're like, I'm going to copy this but make it quote unquote better. Yeah. What they typically do is they'll look at the landscape and they'll find where are the complainers, where are people disgruntled, like what is that? And one of the things that they'll say about eXp sometimes is that it's siloed, like that's the word that they use. He's like, well, there's all these big organizations in the company and everybody's competing for the agents. And to one extent that's true, but I don't really find it to be a problem. Like when I worked at RE/MAX for 5 years, we were a very high producing RE/MAX. We had top agents in our market, on many different levels. And I would find that most of the time when I was competing for a listing, I was competing against another RE/MAX agent. We were the best brokerage in town. So to me, it was just like part of the deal. Like I have to sell myself at the end of the day. The company that I'm with is the opportunity that I'm running my business on. But whether that's me selling real estate at RE/MAX or me building rev share at eXp, like at the end of the day, like I'm selling me. Yeah. And if I can't sell me, what am I selling? Yeah. All I can sell is the company then. And so, I'll use Real as an example. I think that there's a lot of things that they are claiming to be that are either in direct conflict to what their independent contractor says they actually are, or it's just not true. And they're saying, well, we know that some eXp agents were mad that this didn't work out perfectly for them. And that's going to happen in any business, especially when growing as fast as ours. But I just, when we look at who innovated this space, Glenn Sanford innovated it, he changed it, right? It's never going to be the same. Yeah. Real's going to come along. There's going to be countless other companies like them that are going after a revenue share, profit sharing model, if you will. And really we could say, hey, Glenn innovated it through revenue share, but he really took it out of a page of the playbook that was Keller Williams with profit share. He just got into profit share and realized it didn't make any sense. Yeah. He had 1,800 people and nobody was making money.
And recognized that rev share exists in that model. It just goes to a very, very, very small group of individuals.
That's correct.
That's really what's true. And to your point, I had this awareness hearing Glenn today speak that he's the one that's actually innovated. Yep. He's the one that created something new. So these other models that are coming behind it are copycats. Yes. No matter what they say. Yep. And what they're doing is tinkering with perhaps like some numbers and put a different color and flag on it and say, oh, this is new.
Yeah.
When in fact it's not new at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, one of my favorite things that I get if I'm like out there and, you know, I'm talking to somebody and they're like, well, I heard Real was good and, you know, I'm looking at eXp, but they've been around for a while. And they're like, I'm going to go with Real because they're like the new thing and I'm going to have an opportunity similar to what the opportunity was with eXp. And I just find that hilarious because here's the deal. If you've ever read the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, it's all about this concept of a new business model is outside of the box of the norm and it's a blue ocean, like it's, you know, plentiful feeding and it's just clear blue water. But then what happens is when somebody sees that they're having success over there, they all want a piece of that pie too. And that's what we're seeing in our industry now. People like Real, people like Epic, LPT, these new companies are coming in, basically copying our model, saying that they're gonna do what we did. But how does that make sense when we did what we did in a blue ocean and it's now a red ocean? Meaning you now will never have that blue ocean space again because we've changed the model. And until somebody changes the model again, somehow, some way, we're in a red ocean now.
That's right.
So if you think you're gonna step into this competitive market space where you have companies like eXp that dominate, that are super profitable, and you're gonna have the same trajectory inside of that red ocean, you're very misguided.
It's an unrealistic expectation.
Very unrealistic.
And I think what they're being sold is this idea that like the product is what's going to cause that to happen. It's like, well, wait a minute. The product is a copycat of another product. It's like coming out with another kind of flavor of Coke or something.
Right.
Like you tinkered with the recipe. It's like, oh, we're great. We're going to be just as big as Coke. It's like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And I also hear, it's because it seems like a talking point. Like one was the silo. The other talking point I hear is like, well, it's oversaturated.
Yeah.
And to that, I'm like, well, okay, I appreciate that. At the same time, I've been with the company for 20 months. And currently our organization sits at 274 agents. Like, is it oversaturated? There are people in my market that have like 1,000 agents, 2,000 agents. And we're still growing and building.
Yeah, and it's global, you know, so there's countries that we're just going into now that we literally just opened. So ground floor, huge opportunity, and we're getting like our first couple hundred agents there, and there's room to go to 100,000 very conservatively in that country.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about Brazil and New Zealand and Spain, like these countries have enormous opportunity and we just got there. So, you know, we're going to 100 countries, we're going to 1 million agents worldwide, we're at 90,000. We're still very much as an industry at the left side of that bell curve.
Yes.
Because, you know, hey, there's room for everybody. Like I believe that other companies can be successful in this space. It's just then it gets into like brass tacks of like, where are you most likely to be the most successful?
Correct.
And have the greatest opportunity. And when we start laying out the different bullet points of eXp and what they offer, I don't think anybody comes close.
Yeah.
We pay out on 7 levels. A lot of copycat companies are only paying out on 5. Mm-hmm. We pay more. Mm-hmm. You know, when we look at these other copycat companies and we're like, well, what are you guys making over there? And we see like, oh, the number one person in that company, in their model, in revenue share, makes less than some of my people in my organization make in a month, in a year.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What's your opportunity? So I think these are all important things that we have to consider. And I would just say this, what are you gonna build? Because at the end of the day, these companies are platforms now. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And you can stand alone and the platform can be your whole opportunity and it can be your whole front and center. But I would argue that you should be branding and building you.
100%.
And our company supports that not only from an infrastructure side, but they actually encourage it.
Yeah, support and encourage. And I think the false misperception is people imagining that a product will do all of that for you. And it's not. Well, it's accurate because the model's the model, right?
That's
so,
right.
So Instagram is a platform, YouTube is a platform, TikTok is a platform. And people imagine because they sell them like a product, yo, you're gonna blow up. But the truth is like, you have to be talented, you have to add a lot of value, you have to put time, energy, effort, and resources, you have to take risk, right? Like that's what's gonna actually cause that to compound and multiply.
Right. I mean, it's a leadership opportunity at the end of the day. And, you know, I think that's why a lot of us who are leading brokerages, like an independent like I had, or you were leading teams, you know, like you were leading before you came to eXp, we're just transferring that leadership to a new opportunity with much more greater rewards. So I love it. I feel firmly that we have the proven leadership. No other company in our space has proven leadership yet. And there's a big difference between growing from, 0 to 10,000 versus 10,000 to 20,000 versus 20,000 to 50,000. Like those periods of great growth also come with a great cost.
Yeah.
Like the cost of scaling at those different points is difficult. Most companies don't make it. We've not only gotten through it, but through it all, our leadership has always made the right decisions for us and to protect our opportunity. And to me, that carries a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. Are there agents that are at any company that maybe are less than desirable? Absolutely. There's people in the real estate industry that are less than desirable, but that doesn't mean that I get out of the industry. So we can't use some of these things that they say as excuses. We, at the end of the day, need to show up and say, what did I do? What did I build? And how am I going to see a vision for myself and my people in the future? And we need to lead them into that.
Yeah, I love that. It really is about leadership and duplication. So I think that you're one of the most learned on models. You understand them very well. You study them. So maybe what we could do for the agents or whoever's watching is just talk very specifically brass tacks of differences. Because I find it incredibly frustrating when agents come on a call and they're like, oh, like this is the same.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, dude, it's not. So let's take on a case-by-case basis, because I know the comp plan is drastically different.
So one of the biggest things about the comp plan that's a little bit harder to quantify and reconcile with on the front end is that we get paid out on 7 levels and Real gets paid out on 5 levels.
And explain why that's such a huge difference. I understand.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, you're not going to have people on your 6th and 7th level. But as it grows, as it builds, you're going to have a lot of people on those lower levels. In a mature organization with proper compounding, those are going to be the biggest levels you have. Case in point, above me, so I'm part of somebody's 7th levels, right? Above me, I have the top 6 people in the world for eXp. Okay? When you talk to those 6 people, across the board, 80% of the income that they make today comes from their levels 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Now, let's just rewind the tape a minute. Let's say they had built at a competitor's company and they had 5 levels. And let's just say, for simple math, let's just say that one opportunity with 7 levels pays $1 million a year. But 80% of that income is coming from levels 6 and 7. That means if you went to the company that had 5 levels, instead of making $1 million, you'd make 200,000.
It's wild. And I think what is important for people to understand is the reason why the 6th and the 7th are the biggest is because of compounding.
Correct.
Because I know what Real has said is like, well, what we're going to do is you'll make more money on the first couple levels.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the way I described it to somebody recently, I'm like, it's like a magic trick. It's like, hey, don't pay attention to the 6th and 7th. You know what I'm saying?
No, they want to distract you from that.
And what I'm aware of is that those first 2, particularly the first, is dependent on your personal efforts.
Yes.
And I mean, I've been coming to these events now for 2 years, and it is exceptionally rare to find somebody that has personally attracted 50 to 100 agents.
Totally.
It's very, very
handful
rare.
Of people in the whole company.
Like a handful of people in the whole company. So what
I'm actually proud of the opposite of that. When I show people kind of like what my journey's been here at eXp, I'm like, hey, you're a top producer, you're a top team leader, you run an amazing brokerage. This is kind of what it's like, is everything in your life is dependent on your effort. But at eXp, it's not.
Right.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing. When I look at my organization today, over 2,300 people, my personal efforts, the people that I recruited, represent 1.7% of what I get paid on today.
Which is so important in terms of comp plan and models.
Yes.
So that's what's important that I wanted to bring up. So if there's an agent out there who's listening to this and considering different models, if rev share is part of your plan,
yes,
if it's part of your retirement process, if it's part of getting you off the transaction treadmill, then this is very, very important.
Yeah, and this is like one of 10 key points.
Yeah.
I think though, what I'll get sometimes is like revenue share is not that important to me.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've heard come up lately is like our competitors are trying to get the focus off of revenue share because they know our model is superior.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we're like one big happy family over here. And it's like, we are too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. I've flown across the country to events for you and whatnot. We are too. And some of our organizations are bigger than these other entire companies.
Yes.
So siloed or not, like, we're all there for each other and we're all there to help each other. But it really matters that, like, you start to think through revenue share, because, you know, the reason that these companies exist, the reason that we're all here today, is because we've done it the way without revenue share. We got burnt out. We were on the hamster wheel. You know, we were tired of just spending money to make money constantly. And
let's say we decided, because we're close to the beach, we're like, hey, let's take this affair to the beach. Now that's a very specific environment. And as such, it requires a very specific strategy. So what would be our strategy to ensure that we enjoy our time at the beach? What would we need to bring with us? Umbrella? What else? Towels? Swim trunks, don't want to be naked. What else? Sunscreen, it's very important. What else? Food, what else? Beer. Now, anybody besides me ever forget a critical component of that strategy when you went to the beach? Now let's say we decided to shift environments. And we said, hey, this beach thing is cool. Now I want to go skiing. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to put you all on a plane. We're going to take this to a ski lodge. That is a very different environment that requires a very different strategy and set of tools. So what would our strategy be for that environment? Overalls, what else? Snow boots. Snow boots, what else? Snowboard. What would happen if we tried to use the strategy for the beach for skiing? What would your experience be like? Not enjoyable, right? Now, here's what I see happening. I see agents utilizing a strategy or strategies that they were using 2 years ago in a completely different environment for this environment and wondering why they're not getting the same results. Well, I first started selling real estate in 2006. Now, that was a very specific economic and therefore real estate environment. Who here was selling real estate at that time? Oh, good. A good number of people. It was great. Why? Because they had a loan product that said, hey, you could basically say, I make $150,000, and they were like, I believe you. Right? That's unbelievable. And prices were going up 20, 30%. Everybody had FOMO, fear of missing out. They're taking out equity lines to buy other properties because they think it always, right? Okay. So I started selling real estate in 2006 after graduating from the University of Florida. And at that time in college, what the marketplace was giving me was condo conversions. Anybody remember condo conversions? What they would do is buy a 50-year-old pig, put some lipstick on it, and sell the units, right? To the parents and saying, hey, this is an investment. When your kids graduate, it'll be worth something, right? So I sold a lot of those. And then 2008 happened. What caused it to change was a financial collapse. We had huge, large financial institutions disappearing off the planet. In my state, 50% of everything on the market was a short sale or foreclosure. In my county, there were 22,000 properties on the market for sale. Prices going down in the opposite direction, 20, 30% per year. And I didn't know how I needed to change my strategy because I'd been using this other strategy at 26 years old, make $150,000 thinking I'm the man. And then that strategy disappears and it's no longer applicable. So what I did is I got access to a guide. Call that person a mentor, a coach, who could point me in the direction of where the opportunities were. Because you see, at that time, something exploded in the market. What explodes when there's 22,000 properties on the market for sale? Expired listings. They were at the highest they've ever been in history. I grew my business by 25% year over year. And after 4 years was doing 100 transactions and 75 were expireds. I changed my what? Strategy. Does that make sense to you guys? And I believe that everybody here with the right strategy and knowing where to look can continue to, you could dominate any marketplace, including this one, which has changed radically. Has anybody noticed that the environment's changed radically? In preparation for coming, me and Joe were talking about it, I looked at numbers for the county where you guys do business. 2021, this last month that we just passed, there were 7,500 transactions. This year in 2024, there's 4,500. It's gone down 58%. I see a lot of heads nodding. That is an accurate assessment of reality. Huh? We're going to go over what's happening briefly, why it's happening, right? Approximately how long that's going to persist for. Anybody notice that like 5 months ago, everybody started posting that rates were going to come down 5 or 6 times in 2024? Hey, let me ask you a question. Have they? Not once. Okay? That's Agents hoping that it gets a lot easier to do business. Right? So what's happening? Why is it happening? And then more importantly, what strategies are actually working? Is this making sense? So that way everybody can continue, because you guys are all top producers, you can continue to get your unfair share, because it's not the fastest, according to Darwin, or the quickest, or the smartest, or the prettiest, or the one with the most followers. It's the ones that are the most adaptive to what? Change. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Who's up for this AI? I'm sorry, I didn't fly from Fort Lauderdale for that level of energy. Who's up for this AI? Okay, so what's happening? Well, who knows what percentage of homeowners have an interest rate less than 6%? 90%. We will shop for 3 hours to save $100 on Amazon. Why are we hallucinating that somebody's going to trade their 3% for 7%? Why would they do that? Only for a very specific reason. What I would call a life event. Who wants to give me examples of life events?
Divorce.
Divorce? What else?
Death.
Death. What else?
Retirement.
Retirement. Job relocations. Moving to assisted living facilities. Moving to be closer to family. Downsizing, right? So remember how I shared with you how I did all those expireds? What happened in 2011? Marketplace got good. What happens to expireds? Do you think I just very maturely said, oh, I need to pivot and change? You think that's what I did? No, what do you guys do when you don't get what you want? You throw a temper tantrum just like children do. This isn't fair. Why should I have to change? But then I pivoted to probates. I live in heaven's waiting room, team. I have the largest elderly population in the country. And you know what that did? I went from 100 deals to 200 deals. All because I was willing to, you could just answer this yourself. Doesn't have to be out loud. We're all friends here. What percentage of what you're doing have you changed in the last 18 to 24 months? Be honest. Interesting. Is it mature to imagine that I cannot change and still get my unfair share? No. Essentially, I'm waiting. I'm praying to the real estate gods. Please change. Make sense? So that's actually what's happening. What's also happening is that volume, we went from 6 million across the country to 4 million transactions. In this geographic area, from 17,000, we just looked at numbers, to 10,000. Now, the question is, how long do we imagine that's going to persist? Anybody notice that economists rarely know what the hell they're talking about? On a regular basis, right? Well, the last time we had interest rates this high, the Fed funds rate, do you know how long it stayed that high? A decade. Let me ask you a question. Are you prepared for it to stay for a decade? Is your strategy appropriate to staying with this number of transactions for the next decade? No, I appreciate your honesty, right? Because I can't change it if I'm not aware of it. So that's what's happening, right? Now the question is how do I deal with it? Because I have two choices. You know what the first choice is? Stick my head in the sand. How many people know somebody sticking their head in the sand? Yeah, right? But they're still posting on Instagram. #blessed. Right? Which is ridiculous. I can stick my head in the sand or I can deal with it. You need an accurate assessment of reality in order to produce a good outcome. We just cast that, didn't we? Everybody clear on what's true? And your ability to deal with it is directly correlated with getting what you want. Who wants more deals? Yeah. I love it when people say, why'd you get into real estate? I love people. I'm like, that's disgusting. You haven't dealt with enough people. I love houses. I'm like, you know how many times I had to burn my suit because it was like a cat farm? We do this, we help people, but it's also to make money, right? So what's actually working? Well, let's logically think about this. How many people have noticed that there's less opportunities for listings? So what can we logically conclude about that? Every listing appointment you go on, you will more likely than not be what? Competing, right? So what would be a way to deal with that? Logically. Go on more points. What else? Let me ask a candid question. How many people here practice their listing presentation daily? Everybody here is apparently independently wealthy. Now, here's my question. Is that a realistic expectation in an environment with a lot less transactions? You think what's going to get it is you walk in, you're like, oh my God, you have a puppy, I have a puppy. Yay. You should hire me. That's ridiculous, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what's working are agents that are going on lots of appointments on a regular basis. Even though he's a top agent, you know what he does all the time? What do you think? Practices all the time. Do you think it's a fair competition when you go up against somebody who practices daily? No, it's not. Does that make sense? So that's one thing that's actually working right now.
What I would say as well too, just to add on that, and when I got started in the business, I struggled quite a bit. I went 6 months without a sale. I was a buyer's agent at first. And when I made the transition to the listing side, I kept getting beat out by Jim Sandoval, Eric Delgado, like every single one of them would always take the listing and I wasn't. But then Aaron asked me like a key question just to kind of go on the skills. And what he asked me is like, hey, Jose Luis, what's your competitive advantage? He said, like, what makes you different in the marketplace? And I proceeded to say something like, oh, I'm honest. I'm like hardworking.
I put my clients first.
I put my clients first, things like that. And he said, Jose, that's what everybody does. Everybody's honest or supposed to be honest. Everybody's hardworking. Everybody is a good human being. He's like, if you're going to compete, you got to have a competitive advantage. And I listened to this podcast called Founders. And in that podcast, they kind of give like the story of like different founders that have founded different companies like Jeff Bezos, Uber, just like different stories. And they go into like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett's strategy. Do you know what's one of the things that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger look when they're investing in businesses? They look for businesses that have a moat around their business or some sort of competitive advantage.
That's difficult to breach.
That's difficult to breach. So I asked Aaron, I said, what's your competitive advantage? And what he proceeded to tell me is like, I am the most skilled agent in my marketplace. People know when they're competing against me on a listing presentation that if I'm going on that appointment, they better bring their A game. And 95% of the time, I am going to win. He's like, I want to be feared where when people find out that they're going on a listing appointment against me, that they almost like psych themselves out. Correct. Like almost like, oh my God, like
I might as well not even go.
I'm going against Aaron.
Right.
And what I incorporated, and this is right next to you guys, I'm like literally like next door neighbors to every single one of you. I said, okay, that's actually a pretty good competitive advantage. I said, if I'm going to have a competitive advantage that's going to last, I said, what do I want it to be? So I adopted that mindset thanks to Aaron, where I said, all right, I am going to be the most skilled agent in my marketplace, knowing that when I go on a listing appointment and other agents find out that I'm going on a listing appointment, they're going to second guess whether they're going to want to go on that listing appointment. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I did is not only did I become very skilled, but I said, okay, how am I going to differentiate myself from other agents? So what I came up with was I came up with a solution-oriented approach. Meaning if I'm going on a listing appointment, I find out what the problem is and what they need help with, and then I sell based on that problem. So it's not like, okay, what do I offer to you? It's like, okay, tell me a little bit about what you're going through. I identify the problem, and then it's so easy to sell based on the problem. So like somebody's like, oh, like I'm having trouble getting my property ready for sale. Oh, I actually know great contractors that can help you get that property ready for sale. Someone's like, oh, I'm struggling, basically boxing up items. Hey, what if I told you I could send somebody to help you box the items? Somebody has a vacant property. I'm like, hey, what if I told you that I can stage the property for free? So I came up with a differentiation strategy where I came up with a solution to almost every single problem that exists. I challenge you guys to think about, okay, what is my competitive advantage here in the marketplace? Like what makes me different? And what's my value proposition to the consumers? That way, when I'm going on appointments, what's my competitive advantage?
So in an environment where there's less opportunities, one of the ways to deal with that is to become exceptionally more skilled. And that's one thing we could be working on, because when I asked how many people do that on a regular basis, there were no hands, okay? The second thing is this niche thing. So when I said that to you guys, everybody gave me the answers of the niches. Can I ask you guys a question? How many people have intentionally and purposefully tried to cultivate one of those niches? Death, divorce, job relocation, moving to assisted living facilities, like purposefully and intentionally. Yeah, one.
Me.
Guys, and the two people making the most money. Like, Guys, like what I'm aware of, do you see? You can all tell me that these are the places I should be looking, but we're not actually doing anything about it, right? When I started probate, you know how much I knew about that? 0. And I went to the courthouse 6 or 7 times to figure it out, and it was a pain, and I was like, oh, I could be doing other things. But then once I figured it out, I started to call them and drop the amount of people I was calling for expires because that source was dwindling. And within 3 months, I'm taking 4 listings a month. All because I had a willingness to change, right? So that's the second thing that's working, that is niches. And I know Jose, and that's one of the things he's going to talk about is, we are trained, because I think the loudest voices in the training community, and perhaps, and I mean this lovingly, older voices, are saying things like they're saying things like expired, for sale by owners, cancels, just listed, just sold. The 4 horsemen, okay? But what that causes you to do is to think like a real estate agent. Do you know why these guys get so many leads? They don't think like a real estate agent. They think like a wholesaler or an investor. And if you want to see lists, those guys call 15 or 20 lists. They call Liz Pendis. They call people that are behind, that they have liens for 90 days. They call, and we'll go over that. But do you see my point? Is that if I got to go where the opportunities are, and in an environment like the one that we're in with less transactions, where the opportunities are the ones that are extremely motivated. Somebody says to you, I want to sell my house because I want to get more room for my dog's backyard. That's not going to cut it, team. They're not going to be willing to do what it takes. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the next thing that's working, let's think about this logically. If there's less transactions and there's less people that are motivated, what we do as agents never changes. How much of it we do and how we do it is what changes. So if there's less opportunities, what would that mean for the amount of people I would need to speak to on a regular basis? Double or triple? Can I ask an honest question? How many people here have doubled or tripled the amount of contacts they're making? 2. And what's interesting is you guys have in your midst somebody who has a solution to that problem. Because he has this dialer that will allow you to make 50 contacts an hour.
When you help someone, you feel maybe 100 times better than making a paycheck.
100%.
I got a stack of paychecks in my car right now that I haven't cashed.
I don't even give a crap.
I've had students or people where they're like, Brian,
I was literally in a broken down car.
what the hell am I gonna do? I gave you guys $3,000. I'm so lost. And then even if it's 50 to 60K a year flipping houses, I'm like, hell yeah. I guess talk to me about impact. When did you realize that making an impact was so important to you?
Yeah, when I pursued all the things that you just described, and once I got them, it didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
So I've heard Dion talk about it recently, and I love what he's doing. He's like, imagine driving the best car, but you don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Imagine sleeping in the best bed, but you can't get a nice rest.
I'm not to go back to the eXp thing, but that's why I don't want people to be agents, because I'm like, dude, there's so much more, and they get stuck in this rat race of get listings, but help buyers.
Yeah.
Where I just want them to think bigger.
Yeah, and what I would propose is what I can help them with is precisely that.
Yeah.
So it's to now do that, but also earn equity. Also pay attention to this rev share thing. Also, own part of a title company or a mortgage company. So diverse, start thinking like a business person.
Yeah.
So you can create a life worth living. Because to me, I would be in rooms with people where it's like, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Because the industry has a tendency, and because you used to go to all those events, where they praise gross.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful how you incentivize people because it shapes behavior.
Oh, 100%.
And
that was deep.
Yeah.
Write that down. Right? That's very true.
And I would be in rooms with people and I'd be like, bro, let me ask you a question. If you made $1 million but got divorced, are you still successful?
No.
Because to me, there's no amount of external success that can make up for failure at home.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like, let's say you make $1 million a year, but you never go to any of your kids' events. Are you still successful?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think if you have the capacity to lead, you should. Because I think that there's a huge gap of leaders, people like Brian or people like you that are sharing that message when you have a lot of attention and you're very influential. So, spitting on the floor and telling people they're small because they don't have huge car payments.
Yeah.
That shapes behavior.
Oh, 100%.
And it causes people to get on that perpetual hamster wheel.
Yep. And brokers do that on purpose.
And they never get off.
Yeah. Brokers do that on purpose because I used to work at Intero Real Estate.
Oh yeah.
And back in the day, that was like the thing. Like somebody pull up in a Tesla.
Yeah.
Then this other one pulls up in like a more expensive car. And then you're like, damn, I gotta get a freaking Porsche just to hang, be cool and just to drive around with my suit on. So I remember I was like flipping houses. I'm making a bunch of money. And I remember there was a time where I had like 15 flips going on. I was like busier than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, dude, I am not happy. Like, this sucks. Like, I am like...
You were like empty.
Yeah, I was just like, damn. I was like stressed out, empty.
Friction at home because you're working too much.
100%. I was like, dude, real estate's number one. My family's going to be number two. But just for this year.
Yeah. And what I think is so interesting is that there's cognitive dissonance because people are like, I'm a family man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, look at your behavior.
Oh, yeah. No.
You're not.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I
had to be honest with myself. I'd be like, if I'm really honest with myself, it's funny because I told, Jose this, that, you look at like your trophy room. Mm-hmm. And in the past, there would be, oh, I've done this, or I've accomplished this, or I have this. Mm-hmm. And what I realized, and it was really like embarrassing, is that my relationship with my wife wasn't in my trophy room.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, dude, like, what am I doing? That should be the top thing in the trophy room because it's a reoccurring source of joy. Mm-hmm. Where those other things are hits. Mm-hmm. And we drastically overestimate the power of those hits.
Yeah.
Because like I remember I had a car on a dream board for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. I went to the Mercedes-Benz Museum while I was there and sat in it. And then I got it.
Yeah.
And for 2 months, it was like, oh my God. And then it was just a car, bro.
I know.
Like it totally disappeared.
Yeah.
And you drastically overestimate what you think you're going to derive from that.
Yeah.
And in the end, like what really matters is, again, relationships and impact.
Yeah.
And I remember going to one of another mentor that I had, and he asked me to speak at his like 30th anniversary of writing his book. So I flew out to Texas and I did it. And it really struck me because there were people in the room who flew all around, the country to be there. They're Skyping people in. And what I recognized, I thought I was the only one that he had made such an impact. I thought I was like special.
Yeah.
And I realized instantaneously, I'm not special, dude. He's done this for a lot of people. And what I became aware of is that everybody was in that room, not because he had made them rich or because like, he made them blissed out of their mind. It's because like he gave them something that was very helpful or useful. He made an impact in their life.
Yeah.
And what I realized in that moment, I pulled him aside. I said, hey, like not only have you taught me a skill, but you're teaching me how to live.
Yeah.
And that's dope. Because I think culturally, particularly for men, the message that we get is there's only three ways to be masculine.
Yeah.
One is physical ability, strength. So everybody posts, their bodies.
Yeah. Flex biceps.
Yeah. 2 is sexual prowess.
Yeah.
3 is making money.
Yep.
And I don't believe any one of those have anything to do with being a man.
No.
I think being a man is 2 things. 1 is having, being able to give love and being able to receive it. And 2 is having a mission or purpose that's bigger than yourself. So what I see is a lot of particularly men running around trying to prove themselves as men in those areas.
Yeah.
And that leads to what happened to you and what happened to me, which was I do all that. And then I sit around and I'm like, bro, this is like not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
This is empty.
Yeah.
I'm not, I have some accoutrements of success, but like, I don't know my time. I'm working harder now than I probably was like ever. B, relationships are suffering. All these things are suffering.
I'd be in my house, right? Paid off house, just to give context, right? I got a nice window with my pool. I can see the trees.
Yeah.
I got my kids with me watching TV. I got my beautiful wife in the kitchen. I got my dogs all around me. And I'm just like anxious as all hell.
Yeah.
I am just like, holy crap. Like just like playing through all these weird scenarios and like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? I got to file my taxes. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I was like, damn, like I realized that I was in that place for a while. And that's what actually got me to go to church, because I was talking to Ryan about it. And he was like, you're anxious because you're away from God and Jesus. So I started going to church. Got baptized.
And I'm curious though, when he said that, was there any pushback on that? Were you like, nah, bro? Or were you like,
no, I was like, no. I was like,
I'm good. No, I'm good. No.
I was like,
that might work for you, but not for me.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. But I got to the point where I was just almost desperate, where I was just like, I need to figure something out. you can be successful in real estate and business or whatever, and be right with God.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, they enhance each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I realized even after like getting baptized and seeing all these things is like the love, the time, the leverage, all that crap is important. But also whatever your relationship is with Jesus, God, that's even more important because something could happen and then you're gone and you ain't taking any of this leverage, this eXp. You ain't taking
none of it.
And more importantly, for myself, I realized like, oh, a leader, right? A leader makes money. They do this, they do that. Me going to get baptized, I did it for myself, you know, to commit, but I also did it for my kids and my wife, for them to see me commit because I want them to live the same way.
I just read something recently that speaks to exactly what you're saying. So like, if you take a triangle and it's sitting like this, if you turn it on its side, it becomes like an arrow. And most people do leadership like a triangle instead of like an arrow. So what you're doing now is you turn that on its side. Now it's an arrow, and everything behind the tip of the spear is safe.
Yeah.
So now you're leading by going forward. Yeah. And moving in a particular direction. And the other thing I mentioned to someone today, we've done a bunch of podcasts, is you know, when people use the word kingdom, you guys have kingdom. People think a geographic place.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at like the Greek kind of translation of that, that's not what it means. What it means is royal power, royal control, and royal dominion. So in like Genesis, it's like you have control and dominion, complete control and dominion over the earth and all the, you know, right? But that message is different, totally different. So instead of the kingdom of heaven is within you, instead it's the royal power, the royal control, and the royal dominion is within you to make it here as it is there.
Okay.
Right? And now you're because you turn that on its side, now you're leading that way.
What about like, have you ever had like a spiritual or religious experience where it shaped your life?
Oh, 100%. And at an interesting place, not at church.
So the box?
No, it was at like Tony Robbins' event. Okay. So we're doing like a gratitude thing.
Okay.
And there's like 5,000 people in the room. And I have this experience that is difficult to articulate with words. Okay. Because at the time, I am just like you, hard charging, very analytical, very much so in the world. And this experience is like of this like really big presence that felt like it filled up the whole room. And what I heard it kind of like saying to me is, I love you. I don't want you to worry and be scared. Like this is meant to enjoy. It's not meant to like slide through painfully.
Yeah.
And I start crying uncontrollably.
Really?
Yeah. And the dude next to me is like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because it's like this unconditional, like, love. And I remember I called a buddy of mine who's like, you know, evangelical Christian, like super into that. I was like, what do I do with that, bro? Like, that's like, I don't even know what that is. And he was like, oh, and like my language, you know, we would say that that's like this. That's what that is. And usually that happens for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the past, that would be, you know, I would hear people say that and be like, come on, bro, like, what is that?
Yeah.
But because I had a direct experience of that, that was like you had started me down that path.
Yeah. So you weren't really like, were you going to church and stuff before that? Oh, okay.
No, I wasn't reading the Bible. I wasn't. I think for me, like, it's like in the past, I don't know about you, but I was very motivated by significance. So I wanted people to know. And I'm very competitive by nature. Yeah. So it was like, hey, I want to be like the guy. I want everybody to know. Yeah. And it's wild to think of like the example, which is like, you know, right before knowing that his time on earth was going to come to an end, what he did was wash everybody's feet. And what he said is go love others as the way I've loved you. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I know. That's like, what are you saying, bro? Like, that's unbelievable. And I know it's like a measure that's like, I think it perhaps impossible, you know, to live to perfectly, but I think it's certainly one to aspire to.
Yeah. What about, I guess last topic, like when you go off a course, let's say you find yourself anxious or depressed or whatever the case may be, do you ever like figure out how you got there and then how to quickly get back?
Yeah, so I think like why, I think people get lost in why, and why is less important than how, because how is process. I can do something with how.
Okay.
And what I focus on is what I feel. And what I feel is my emotional home. So I can live in a mansion, but if I'm focusing on what's not working or what I don't like, then I'm going to feel lack and scared and worried, right? So I need to pay attention to how I may be contributing to my own discomfort. Because something may happen that moves me, let's say, to like the uptight end of the continuum.
Yeah.
And anxiousness is usually about projecting into the future, and it's worrying about what's going to happen there and trying to really control it.
Yeah.
Like perfectly. And someone like you, you're good at maneuvering props and players into configurations that please you. So you're good at maneuvering parts on the outside. At the same time, it's still like imagining that if somehow I maneuver them in this particular configuration, then all will be well. I'll be centered and at peace. I'll feel that beautiful thing on the inside, right? And the problem with that is that when you maneuver things into configurations that please you, they never stay there. It's kind of like, imagine if you saw like ducks. You know how people say they want to get their ducks in a row? So imagine you saw somebody in a park with a bullhorn yelling at ducks to walk in a straight line. You'd be like, that person's got
An
a
idiot.
problem. Yeah. Or they have like a mental problem.
Yeah.
They need to go talk to somebody. Yet isn't that what we do?
Yeah.
We stand over our ducks and we yell at them. Why are you not straight? Why isn't this not bigger? Why isn't this faster? Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And so through awareness, if I can become aware, like, hey, how am I contributing to this? What am I focused on right now? Right? And then physiology is another component where my nervous system responds to my physiology. So let's say me and you were having a conversation, and let's say we were in a heated debate or argument, and somebody comes in and tells a ridiculously funny joke.
Yeah.
It's impossible for us to stay mad.
Yeah.
Because my nervous system responds to my physiology. So fear is a visceral response, but so is courage. I have to like train courage into my body. And then language.
Hold on, rewind. You trained courage into your body? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, I have to train it. And
how do you do that?
Well, I think the way you do that is by like intentionally and purposely moving towards things that are difficult physically. So like, you know, whether that's a workout, whether that's a cold plunge, like temperature, whether that's, you know, it's too hot out and I don't feel like going outside, but doing it, is you take that little governor that's in your mind that's always trying to be like, don't do that, whatever, in an attempt to preserve your well-being. But we don't live in a time of like bears and liars and tigers anymore.
Yeah.
And every time you make a different decision, that voice gets smaller.
So if you look up badass or badassery in the vocabulary, you'll probably find Aaron Novello's pictures right next to it. So I got to interview Aaron in the Team GoGo Agent Attraction call a few months back, and I didn't know who he was. Well, after the call, I got off of there and I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. I love his mindset. I love his attitude. I think it's really important, our mindset, and it's really important what we believe of ourselves, because then we take action if we believe that we can. And I'm super excited for all of you to be able to listen in.
I got the go-go seal of approval, apparently. Yeah, that's cool.
So it was like, I was like, you were like the badassery of real estate in action. And I wanted to interview you. I know you do all kinds of interviews, like, you know, all kinds of things, but I really wanted to get to know you of how did you get to this mindset and how did you get so solid in who you are, right? So can we go all the way back to like, let's start at childhood. Who is Aaron?
Yeah, so I think that we can only behave in accordance with the way that we see ourselves, which is super interesting, right? Because I have the good fortune of coaching agents across the country and, you know, in the organization that we're building. And no matter how much rah-rah, like how much motivation, we will always fall back with our self-image. And the issue is like, okay, well, where does that image come from? And usually it comes from experiences that we've had in the past. And what I think people don't realize is that it's also malleable, meaning
What does that mean?
It means that you can change it. And you know this because you spent a lot of time with like Tony Robbins, and he talks about like physiology, focus, and language. And those are the ways that we can shape our identity. And our identity is how we see ourselves, right? So, you know, there's a saying that says like, when you see it, you'll believe it. That's actually not what's accurate. It's when you believe it is when you'll see it. Yeah. So my experience as a younger person, which kind of shaped me at that point, was my parents got divorced. Biological parents got divorced when I was young. And I was sent on a plane like for 3 years, from the time I was 1 till 4, to go live somewhere for
2 months out of the year, 3 months out of the year. And really with a stranger, you know what I mean? Not somebody that I actually knew them. And if you can imagine kind of being a little 3 or 4-year-old, like our brains aren't fully developed at that time. So we make meaning. And the meaning that I deduced is like, oh, I must have done something wrong. Like there must be something wrong that this person that I love so much is like sending me away. So then the meaning that I came up with is like, oh, that means I have to be like the best at everything. So
okay. I'm going to stop you right there because I know exactly why I like you. So I'm going to tell you my story, which is literally the same meaning, different story behind it. But I have my parents, they're still alive, healthy, and they're married. And I was raised with my sister the same way. My parents never told us they love us, like the words, right? Mm-hmm. And so I achieved thinking if I achieve this, then they're going to tell me they're proud of me. Or if I get that award, then they're going to tell me they love me. So I know exactly where you're coming from and where that achiever began. Now I don't know how to do anything else. I no longer need that. I no longer do it because of the same reason, but it created a habit and I don't necessarily want to break. It's my identity. It's who I am.
Yeah. And what I'm aware of is that the reason underneath changes. So initially it was fear. It's like I'm afraid that if I don't perform at an optimal level, then I won't be accepted and therefore I won't be loved.
Oh,
the power,
you speak my language.
While externally people might look at you and be like, wow, like you're producing favorable outcomes. Internally, it wasn't like a fantastic experience. And it's really about raising levels of consciousness. So the first level of consciousness is like, why is this happening like to me? It's to me consciousness, which is really victim. Like, you know, this is not fair. Like, why am I having to go like, you know, on a plane? And like, why is this happening to me, right? The second level of consciousness is by me, which is meaning like I'm a co-creator of my experience. So I create with the creator, right? And the idea is like, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? It's like, well, how's it happening for me? So everything becomes like a learning experience. And then the highest level of consciousness is actually through me, which is that there's something that's bigger than me, and you can call that whatever you want, Ray, Chi, the primordial vibration, the Holy Spirit, God, like whatever you want to call it, that wants to accomplish something through me.
Oh my gosh, like you and me literally talk the same language. You know the Zig Ziglar quote that I can have absolutely anything in life, the more people I can have to get what they want. I'm in the people business. I'm in the business of changing lives through me and through what I learned. And I do believe in God. So I do talk a lot about God. And I have a lot of spiritual leaders that live today and lived in the past, like Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's no longer here with us, but Tony Robbins, who is. And I try to take as many people as I can every single year to UPW, which is Unleash the Power Within. He is 60 some years old. So who knows how long he's going to be here. And it's so different to be able to go to an event like that in person than it is to read a book or watch something on TV or YouTube, right? So I'm assuming what happened, it started in your childhood, but when did you start realizing that, hold on a minute, I give meanings to things because of things that happened. It doesn't necessarily stand true anymore. When did you start realizing this soul search? Well, first of all, I say the same thing. I say that business is a spiritual game.
You know, my family of origin, they're nice people, but they, you know, were ignorant. And ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It just means they didn't know something about financial freedom and independence. So I watched, you know, they live paycheck to paycheck. They're kind. A couple times we were on food stamps. Like, so I was just aware of the negative consequences of like poverty, essentially. And I made a decision where I was like, look, I don't know what the way is, but I'm going to either find the way or make the way. This will not be my experience for myself or anybody that I'm responsible for. So I started to read a lot of books. And the books that I had a tendency to read obsessively were about building wealth, and they all had a tendency to gravitate towards real estate. And I figured, well, what better way to learn about the vehicle of real estate than to help people to buy and sell it? And what was interesting, Gogo, is on those personality profile tests that I would take, I'd always try to find who made the most money. And it was like surgeon. I try to like will the test to be like, yeah, I'm supposed to be a surgeon. You know what it would always come back as? Salesperson. And I would be like, no. Like, yeah. Right. So that led me to, I was in a talk at the University of Florida where I went to school, and there was a woman there who was talking about real estate. And the guy who was leading the talk was like the richest guy in Gainesville. He owned the biggest private gym in Gainesville. He had a helicopter, like a plane, all that stuff. And he was talking about a book called Think and Grow Rich. So those two things kind of coincided. I figured, well, like, all right, well, what better way for me to kind of, get into this, like this invisible hand that was pushing me in that direction. And that's how we started to kind of look at real estate sales as a mechanism for raising cash to build wealth. And it wasn't fantastic at first. Like I made $13,000 my first 10 months. Like it was not off to the races. Like
I made 16,000 in my first year.
And I think people imagine, particularly in an Instagram world, that like that's how it is. But anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly before you can learn to do it well. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that the barrier is so high, because if it was easy, everybody would do it and the pay would drop dramatically.
So then what happened? Was there like a pinnacle moment when you're like, okay, I need to figure out this mindset things? Was it kind of like a snowball effect? Like, where did it really start for you when you started working on Aaron?
Well, I had been, reading lots of books. I've been professionally coached since I'm 26. I'm 43 now. So I recognized, that I needed guides really to kind of condense the learning curve. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal growth and development. And what really caused me to start to pivot in the direction that I'm going now was not like a wonderful, warm and fuzzy epiphany. It's usually pain. Because pain is a much more stronger motivator than pleasure. We're way more motivated by pain than we are pleasure. I was selling like 150 homes a year, just me. Like I didn't have buyer's agents or anything. It's just staff. 80% of that business being listings sold. And I was also coaching 30 people, 28 to 30 people individually one-on-one, and like 50 people.
Oh my gosh.
So I was doing that for 2 years. And, while the money's great, what was happening is it was requiring like 60 to 70 hours a week of working. And I have younger. Life. Yeah. I mean, I had no life, but I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old now. So I was making a trade. I was very conscious of the trade that I was making. At the same time, though, it started to reach a point where it was no longer acceptable to me to make that trade. And it wasn't necessary, because the other thing that I'd been doing, because I was so maniacally focused on wealth, is from the beginning, I was saving and investing 50% of everything I earned. And my wife, we were having conversations, and she's the operations person. And she would say to me like, look, like, what are you doing? Like, how much money would it take for you to like chill out? But that was,
do you know how to chill?
Yeah, I'm learning. So what I'm aware of is that's like running. I was running aggressively. So it's one thing to like run towards something. It's another thing to run away from it.
I did the same thing. When I joined eXp, I was very much in production. I burned the candle on every angle. So if my candle had 100 angles, I burned them on all angles. I did production, I did agent attraction, I built 2 boot camps, like all of that in the first 3 years being with the company. I also haven't sold real estate in the last probably 3 years. So 2.5 years, burned it all. And then the last 3 years, I haven't sold a single piece of real estate. I do it through my team, but not through my own time and effort anymore. But what I wanted to say, now that I was in Europe, it was the first time ever, because what happened is, right, I was a solo agent with a single assistant who was also my transaction coordinator initially when I switched to eXp. Then I started all of these different companies, build all of these boot camps, did the downline, all of those things, which now I had to learn how to leverage. I can't be doing everything anymore. So ended up at 17 assistants, but I put all of my effort into building these different companies and being involved in every single step in every single process, any new release, anything that we do, right? Now that I went to Europe for 14 days, I think I was gone. I think I talked to my team maybe twice, maybe. And so at first I was like, oh, they can kind of do this without me, which is super exciting. But at the same time, when you're so involved in something, it's also super scary that you're no longer needed.
Like being being a leader of leaders has different activities that are associated with it, different responsibilities than being a technician or a rainmaker. So to be a rainmaker, I got to prospect every day. I got to do lead follow-up. I got to go on appointments. I have to negotiate deals. I have to practice my skills on a regular basis. I have to be consistent. Like there's certain things that I have to do if I want to do it in a meaningful way. Well, being a leader has nothing to do with any of that stuff. I have to build people one-to-one and one-to-many. I have to be constantly learning so I could be adding value to other people. Like I have to constructively work through conflict because there will be conflict.
Oh yeah.
I have to be able to teach others and lead classes. So there's different, if you're a shitty marketer, you have to become a world-class salesperson. For 15 years of my career, because of the instruction I was getting, didn't pay attention to marketing at all. So I turned myself into the Michael Jordan of selling real estate. I could list 100 homes a year. I did that 10 years in a row. Did 200 deals a year twice because I didn't understand this.